So real-time marketing is critical, and it's something that we do, but it's important that operators understand to combine both the historical and the real-time. And when it comes to AI, AI is a funny one because it can be a bit of a buzzword, and I think today that people are abusing the word a little bit.
Hey, welcome to Connected with Pragmatic Solutions. Inside each episode, we feature one of the leading suppliers of platform integrated services and discuss their products and the value they bring to operators. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Moti Coleman from Optimove. Moti, it's a real pleasure to be speaking with you here. We have a long-standing relationship with Optimove. Many of Pragmatic Solutions PAM operators already take advantage of what the advantages afforded to them by Optimove. But we're onboarding new operators all the time, and we're often asked about what you guys do. So, Moti, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the problems that Optimove solves for operators in the gaming industry?
Sure, thanks Ashley, it's good to be here. So Optimove have been around for the best part of 12 or 13 years. I myself have been at Optimove for 10 of those years, and we still solve the same problems today that we always did, hopefully slightly better today than we used to, just as life goes on and you continue to improve. But the fundamental problem that we were always solving was helping our clients maximize customer value through personalized campaign management. And that as a concept's never changed. Like I said, sort of the way that we go about doing that and how we help our clients achieve that has progressed as time's gone by. But fundamentally, businesses understand if they speak to their customers in a one-to-one or as close to a one-to-one as they possibly can, they're going to maximize the engagement that they get from those customers, and that's what we help our clients do.
So what does that translate to in terms of value for the operator? How does your product directly impact their business?
Yeah, so look, we live in a world of an immense amount of noise, and that's even noise that people want to listen to, let alone the noise that they don't want to listen to. So what we try and help our clients achieve is the ability to cut through that noise, and it's always been felt by us and probably by others as well. I don't think we invented the concept of personalized engagement, but in doing so, actually being able to talk to your customers in the way that they want to be spoken to, and the ultimate outcome of that, like I said before, is to increase engagement. How that actually impacts your business is of course through many different ways. Optimove is a very data-centric platform, and so depending on the different types of KPIs you're looking to measure would be the focus of the specific campaign that you're looking to run. But ultimately what you're trying to do is to make sure that when you're speaking to the customer, and when 10 of your other competitors and 10 other businesses that aren't even in your space are speaking to your customer, you're the one that resonates the most. You're the one that's speaking to the customer in the voice and the language. You're touching them on an emotional connection. You're understanding exactly who they are, where they are at any point in time in their behavioural journey, and ultimately being able to get them to engage with you as a business, to engage with you as a platform, and to continue to enjoy playing the various different games on your site.
Now, Moti, since Optimove kind of pioneered this space, this product type, there's a few other companies in the market that purport to be operating in the same space that you guys are. It may be difficult to understand the key differences between what Optimove, who's been doing this for quite some time, and some other companies that seem to be speaking the same around the same topics offer. So how do you differentiate from what you see as competitors in the market? Do you see them as competitors in the market?
No, there absolutely are competitors in the market, and you're right in saying that we pioneered this, and for a very long time there weren't many competitors in the market. Some have come and gone. The ones that are around today are definitely proper businesses, and they're doing very nicely in the market. Back in the day when I first started at Optimove, we'd sort of be competing with the likes of Salesforce and Adobe. There weren't niche players in the online gambling space, but more broadly they were offering CRM type solutions. So I mentioned before, we didn't invent the concept of personalized engagement, but if we take that sort of value proposition, maximize customer value through personalized campaign management as kind of a headline, I think the way that we always approached it was from the perspective of the person. So even before Optimove was building out software. We were, for 3 years prior to that, from 2009 2012, we were doing kind of modelling from a service perspective on behalf of businesses, B2C companies, and helping them identify different elements in their customer behaviour. And in our DNA, at the core of who we are as a business, yes, kind of people see us today and it's a CRM platform, you can orchestrate all of your campaigns and stuff through Optimove. But the actual underlying power of the tool comes from our ability to help our clients understand who their customers are. And that's kind of the building block upon which everything else kind of runs, which is that we will help our clients identify the correlations between customer behaviour and customer value. And I really think that that's why, whilst we'd never set out initially to be a platform that focused on the online gambling space, there's so much data that's generated in even an individual session that a customer has in an online gambling environment versus an e-commerce environment where, you know, maybe you come back in today I buy a t-shirt and in a month I buy some socks. And obviously I'm oversimplifying it, but you know, in any one given session in online gambling, it's wins, it's losses, it's deposits, it's withdrawals, it's in-play betting, it's pre-match betting, it's switching over to the casino, etc., etc. There's so many different things that are taking place, and the amount of data that's being generated in any one session, and then, you know, you go beyond just the session itself, our ability to make very interesting insights into the data and into the customer behavior was just magnified a thousandfold. And so, you know, at our heart, what we've always done is help our clients understand their customers in a lot more detail. That initially started out through predictive modelling, but that notion as a theme continues throughout the product, and it today continues to be the place that we sit aside from the rest of the market. I think other vendors in the space attack this same problem from slightly different angles, but I think where we've always had, you know, it was nice to be first to market, that always helps, of course, but I think one of the things that's allowed us to become the sort of the major player in the industry has been our approach, and that seems to be a problem-solving exercise that's resonated all the way through. And of course, once you kind of go 12 years down the line, you know, we've worked with something in the region of about 1,500 brands, all the way up to the biggest players in the industry. The product itself is very, very battle-tested, and there's not many questions that a CRM team can ask us today that we haven't been asked before, and the product hasn't, you know, gone through multiple rounds of improvements in order to be able to adapt to the sports betting calendar versus what the difference is between a casino jackpot, and in the lottery space, a weekly rollover. There's all these various different nuances that take place across the board, but you know, by this point in time, we've seen it and done it, which isn't to say we stopped learning, but you know, we've certainly been through it a fair few times, so pretty well ingrained in what the industry requires from a platform like ours.
When operators talk to us about engagement tools and data insights, two key words come up a lot lately. One is real time, and the other is, of course, AI or machine learning. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about Optimove in those two areas.
Sure. So initially, real time wouldn't have been in the picture, and you know, I'm going back to sort of 2012, and maybe it wasn't either a requirement or a technological capability. And kind of our whole world of historical batch load data was all about building out predictive models, and it gives you a very good understanding of who the customer is. And that's still true today, you know, whether real time or not. In order to be able to understand who a person is, you need to understand who the history is. Forget, you know, even Dave, forget what we're talking about, you and I chatting. In order for me to know who you are, I need to know your history and your background and where you came from. So that remains true today. Where real-time marketing becomes interesting is that, you know, I want to understand exactly what you're going through right now in this moment. Now, again, if all I know about you is what's happened to you in this moment right now, that does tell me exactly what's gone on, but without the context of history, it doesn't really help. So to use an online gambling example, a customer can lose 3 times in a row. One customer's got a daily active for the last year, and the other customer's a high risk of churn. The customer that's high risk of churn that loses 3 times in a row would probably recognise that those 3 losses may be the tipping point towards churn, whereas a daily active customer that loses 3 times in a row probably doesn't. So whilst real-time marketing is also very, very interesting, it's the combination of the history and the now that really helps you understand what to do about the customer in the moment. The customer, like I said, that's high risk of churn that loses 3 times in a row, that might be a customer that you think, right, maybe we give that customer cashback, for instance, whereas the other one you probably wouldn't. So real-time marketing is critical, and it's something that we do. I mean, we bought a real-time event streaming business about 5 years ago, and all that technology is out the box part of what we do today. But it's important that operators understand to combine both the historical and the real-time. And when it comes to AI, AI is a funny one because it can be a bit of a buzzword, and I think today that people are abusing the word a little bit, and that's because ChatGPT came out and everybody kind of understood a real world application of what AI is, which is I can write a prompt into a box and it feeds me back an answer, and that people understand that. People can visualize exactly what that is, and you can do the same with images as well. You can type into a prompt, I want to build an email that has a slot machine that's pink, that has fairies jumping around it or whatever, and it will produce that content for you immediately. So we have that real world application of AI. We've been doing AI since the beginning, and all the predictive modeling kind of was built over the top of that, which is that the tool has always learned from the way that customers are performing and makes very strong recommendations about how to segment the customers and which campaigns to target them with and which journeys to send them down. So we've always built our platform over the top of very, very smart orchestration. Now we also have today all of the AI capabilities like the ones I've mentioned in terms of content. I see the content side of AI, whether it's in terms of text or whether it's in terms of images, from the perspective of efficiency, operational efficiency, which is obviously completely critical as well. And I think that with the modern day, today's application of AI, I think what it's done is it's completed the picture. And so something that we talk about quite a lot at the moment is a term that we've coined, the positionless marketer. And the positionless marketer essentially is this idea of empowering individual marketers with the ability to do more than one part of the assembly line of marketing. To get a campaign out the door requires the segmentation, it requires the data analysis, it requires moving lists, it requires building templates, it requires putting in images. But the reality is today that with AI and with automated tools like Optimove, you can do a huge chunk of that yourself. In essence, you're allowing the marketer themselves to be what we would say is more positioned. It's like what you have in basketball, where today, rather than having a center that's the big guy that's standing under the net, that's picking up the rebounds or whatever else it would be, everybody's kind of doing every job. And we see that happening more and more across every discipline. In marketing, we really feel that an automated tool that's imbued with AI can really help the marketer become a lot more than what they currently are.
Can you put some of this in context with an example of a recent success story with a customer of Optimove and how you've been able to help improve their business performance?
Sure. Look, we're very lucky to work with some of the major operators across the space. I mean, in the world of Pragmatic, we work with DAZN, which is a really, really interesting business. Outside of the world of Prag, Bet365 would probably be the biggest example of an operator in terms of a single brand operator. There isn't really another example that you could rely on there. And I think when you look at a business like Bet365, probably the biggest thing that they're looking to achieve at scale is efficiency, right? You can do all of your clever modeling, but they've got people that do clever modeling. And you can do all your data analysis, but they've got hordes of people that do data analysis. Actually, what we do for businesses like Bet365 is the operational efficiency. More than anything, is to provide them with this centralized hub that allows everybody in the business to have a single view of the customer. Everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet, essentially, and allows the individual people working in the various different teams to be able to take control of more parts of the process. So, if you're breaking down the barriers between individual teams in the company, and you're allowing individual marketers to do a lot more with what they've got, then that operational efficiency, when you extrapolate that across a business like Bet365, or another example would be Entain or the Kaizen Group for brands like Betano, you start to come to a place where you can really supercharge the CRM orgs of these businesses.
Well, we are the company we keep, and Optimove has a top tier list of existing customers. So great example. Let's discuss the nature of the connection to the PAM, the integration. So if an operator wants to get started with Optimove, what's involved in activating Optimove services from the PAM?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question, because I'd say probably my first 5 years in this job, I'd have probably said doesn't take much. It's quite easy. Don't worry, we're going to do all the heavy lifting. It's going to be pretty smooth. And I think with time and with experience, and I've come to understand that anybody that tells you that's probably hiding a few things. And the reality is that no technical integration is easy. And anybody, like I said, anybody that tells you that is probably trying to disguise things a little bit. The reality is that when you're moving data from A to B, it's difficult, and everybody has the data in the formats that they want it to be in, and the various different tables that they've got, and the different attributes that they want to talk about. It's a heavy lifting process. That's just the reality of the situation, and it takes a couple of months to get things up and running, and that's the batch data, and that's the real-time data, and that's the connections back into the bonus tool if you want to automate every single part of the CRM journey to get the campaign out the door. So the first thing I'd say to that is that it's definitely not easy. It's something that we've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So we've got big teams full of people that know how to do this, but one of the best ways to reduce the friction there is through integrations with businesses like yourself. Ultimately you are the data provider over and above, well, maybe not over and above everything. I'm not sure how you necessarily see yourself, but for the way that I see businesses like Pragmatic is that you are from our perspective, the source of the data itself, and all your clients want to be able to utilize that data in the best way they possibly can. By working with you and by building the integrations, your client list can take advantage of the pipes that have already been built, and understanding that Optimove already has read the data tables in the format that Prag provided, that the connections for real time exist, the connections back into the bonus tool, all of these various kind of ideas. We don't have to build it bespoke each time we restart a project, and so it becomes a much more frictionless, I don't know how many double negatives there are in there, a much easier process, a much more fluid, thank you, a much more fluid process to get operators up and running, and being able to ultimately get the first campaign out the door, which is what they're all trying to achieve. We really appreciate and respect and enjoy the relationship that we've got with you guys, because ultimately your clients and ours benefit from that.
With many operators today in locally regulated markets, they're governed by regulations around the way they communicate with customers. Is there anything that Optimove does to support operators that are in locally regulated markets?
Yeah, I mean, look, regulation is always going to be a hot topic. In some places, that means that bonusing is a real problem. The Scandinavian markets tend to be one of those places. Let's see what happens with Brazil as well. In the UK, it's been more centered around problem gambling, or responsible gambling, would be a better way of speaking about it. So the first thing is you need to have a partner in anything you do that understands the pains that you're going through, and regulation is obviously a key one. And so, whilst it's nice for me to show off about the companies that we work with, as you can imagine, in doing so, it means that we have to touch these regulatory points in every single one of their markets, and people inside of Optimove are very well versed in the various different nuances of the different markets. So one thing to say, if we look at it from the kind of the bonusing perspective, I think anyway we're an industry that bonuses too much, probably, or we're a bit addicted to it. So actually being smart in the way that you can actually personalize content and personalize messaging, and personalize on-site experiences, rather than just sending the next and the next and the next bonus, which is ultimately a race to the bottom anyway. There's a lot of very smart ways that you can do that. Gamification's becoming a way that you can do that as well. If we talk about problem gambling in the UK, can you build out responsible gambling predictive models? Can you identify customer behavior at an early stage that's going to have an issue later on down the line? So yeah, listen, there's a number of ways that we work with our clients in that way, but I suppose it starts from a perspective of actually understanding what the local market requires.
Great, thanks Moti. Fortunately, Optimove is pre-integrated with Pragmatic Solutions, so there's a head start there for customers of Pragmatic Solutions PAM platform, but As you mentioned with Bet365 and others, you also integrate to operators through other connection points. If anyone's interested in getting started with Optimove, you can get a hold of Moti or visit their website. Check out the links in the description below. Moti, thank you so much for speaking with us today and
Pleasure.
for taking part in Connected. I'm Ashley Lang, CEO of Pragmatic Solutions. Thank you for watching.